What's up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Alright, today's video, we're going to be talking about A.X.E. Judgment Day Omega #1 by Kieran Gillen and Gui Villanova. And in this video, I'm basically going to be breaking down the fallout of the Marvel Comics event A.X.E. Judgment Day, as well as how the Eternals are making up for hiding the truth about their resurrection protocols from humanity, as well as musing about a very interesting secret about the living mutant island Krakoa, and how Ajak, in her new celestial god form, is going to change the Eternals forever.
You can't see me, you Stevie, wondering how I reach more evolutions than Evie and make it look easy.
Okay, so when we pick this book up, I'm not going to rehash a lot of the stuff that happens at the beginning of this book, because basically it's just kind of telling you how A.X.E. Judgment Day ended. But the thing I think a lot of people are really going to be curious about is what's up with Ajak and her new celestial god form, her new god powers. Like, what is she going to do to help the Eternals going forward? How are the Eternals gonna help the Eternals going forward? Like, what is up with the Eternals now that all their secrets have been aired out? Like, what's the move? Because right now, humanity hates them. They actually hate Eternals probably more than they hate mutants right now. People do not like the Eternals. We even see over the course of this comic that the character Sally, who we were introduced to in the A.X.E. Judgment Day Death to the Mutants tie-in comics, who was regularly keeping contact with Zyme the Mimitar, one of the giant Hex Eternals, even she's not terribly crazy about seeing Zyme when she appears before her in this issue, which granted she gets over it pretty quickly once Zyme explains herself and why she did the things she did and why she had no control over how she operated, but also how she was encouraging Sally to move on with the poetry easing and the website and fulfilling her dreams and all that stuff. Eventually, Sally kind of came around, but it was one of those things. At first, she was like, I don't know how to feel about you. And we are also in this issue reintroduced to the character of Sophia, who, if you didn't keep up with Kieran Gillen's run on Eternals, Sophia is the mother of Toby Robson, the teenager who died so that Icarus could be resurrected in Eternals #6. And while Icarus has visited Sophia before, we saw this in Eternals #7, it didn't really quite go the way that he was hoping that it would go. She was very upset with him, especially when he gave a really half-ass excuse for why Toby just mysteriously and suddenly died, despite the fact that he promised that he would protect Toby, that was his mission to protect Toby. In this issue, now that the truth is out, Sophia knows that Icarus was the one responsible for Toby's death, and Icarus even tells her as much, that it was his death that caused Toby to be taken away from her. And she responds in about roughly the way I think any parent would. But that's kind of the thing here with Icarus, is that Icarus, like the other Eternals right now, he is trying to make amends. He's trying to fix what was broken, even though it's technically something he can never give her back. He can't give Sophia her son back, because when the progenitor resurrected everyone, kind of like as we already saw earlier with the character Sally, Sally was killed during A.X.E. Judgment Day, but she was brought back because the progenitor decided to bring back every single person that had been killed by the progenitor's actions, not the actions of anyone else. The only person that was killed by the progenitor's actions that he didn't resurrect was the eternal Circe, and that is because humanity wanted her dead, and it was kind of the progenitor's way to also kind of make up for some of the things that he had done himself. But in this, Sophia tries to kill Icarus. Like, she tries to stab him, she throws a skillet of scalding hot food on him, and a bunch of other things, and none of it even work. She actually does more damage to herself trying to hurt Icarus than she does to Icarus himself, and it's because he's already hurting more than she could ever hurt him. And it's in this moment that she realizes, wait a minute, maybe this isn't the way. Like, she's actually starting to think rationally. This is something you don't normally see, even in real life. She's starting to act a little more rationally about the situation, realizing that maybe they are both hurting in their grief. And Icarus, and he does change his appearance, cutting off his long blonde locks and hiding his appearance so that he can visit her more regularly to speak with her, and they can both grieve together over the loss of Toby, because at the end of the day, they both loved Toby Robson. Even though, Icarus really didn't know Toby as well as his own mother would, he still cared about that kid, and he hates that he is responsible for the death of that child. So Icarus and Sophia have been having these secret meetings where they're trying to work through their grief together. I think it's a very sweet thing. It's a very, very sweet thing that, just is, I don't know, it felt really human. Because once again, this is all about the Eternals trying to change. They're trying to be different, and this is Icarus's way of doing just that. We even see at a later point, Icarus is just going out into the world, just trying to help people in mundane ways, but using his powers for the betterment of good. This is actually a part of Ajak's new plan to get the Celestials to repent and make penance for hiding the secret of how they are resurrected from humanity. This is one of those moments where it kind of reminds me of something that was done very similar. I don't really remember the issue at this precise moment, but there was an issue somewhere. I can't remember where it popped up, but I'm sure someone in the comments will bring it up. But there was an issue of one of the recent X books where they went back and revisited some of the rules of Krakoa, like kill no man, protect the sacred land, so on and so forth. But they're kind of doing the same thing in this issue with what Kieran Gillen is doing, but revisiting the core principles of the Eternals. And it's one of those things where Ajak is trying to make little amendments here and there as best as she can to make it to where the Eternals can actually have an existence that's worth living. She even dictates in the principles, one of the things that she wants to change is that you can't attack the Celestials, you can't hurt the Celestials. That is one of the core principles. They must protect the Celestials at all costs, but she also points out how she wants to make an amendment to that, where if a Celestial is wicked, if they are somehow corrupted, as what has happened very recently, they are allowed to fight back against their gods. Is one of the things that she wants to change. And one of those other things is also about correcting excess deviation, where she wants to put in protocols that might help change the wording of that, where technically it still seems like she wants to, continue the core path of the Eternals in taking out excess deviation, but it seems like she wants to tackle it from a different perspective, as Thena talks about with the character Crow later on in this issue, where they're talking about how they're going to try and figure out a way to correct excess deviation without just necessarily killing people, but actually finding a cure for it, like actually trying to do something different other than doing what they've always done, and that's just wipe out deviants as they see fit. Because as we've learned over the years, while yes, the deviants do evil things from time to time, it's not necessarily that all deviants are evil. We learn in Kieran Gillen's run on Eternals that there are deviants out there who just want to live their lives and, just make art or write poetry or be cooks and, all kinds of other types of creative people. They don't really care about world domination, at least not, in the way that they did back during the old, Jack Kirby days. And the other thing is to protect the machine, and of course we know the machine is Earth itself, but it's also the core systems of the Earth itself. And she talks about how she wants to make it to where maybe that can be kind of broadened a little bit. Yes, we protect the machine, but that also means protecting everyone within it, and that's what the Eternals are doing right now. We see later in this issue, once again, as Icarus was going out just helping someone who had gotten a flat tire out in the middle of nowhere, he goes out there and he fixes their car for him. He uses, a power most people don't realize that all Eternals have is the ability to transmute matter and create something out of nothing. That's something that Icarus does. He just shows up, boom, he's like, here, boom, here's a tire, I'm putting it on here, it works, going about your way. Never really telling anyone who he is and just doing good things. We see another point where Phastos just kind of casually walks by and melts a gun that someone has used to try and shoot somebody. Or where Thena saves a bike rider from being hit by a car. Sprite steals a wallet from a rich guy and drops it in front of a homeless person, which that might end up leading to some crazy stuff there. But we see Makari racing past a bunch of cops as they're about to unload on somebody. And while we don't really know exactly the context of the situation, but it seems like it's a situation where Makari feels like the cops are shooting someone who probably doesn't deserve to be shot, or maybe are gonna hit people that could potentially be killed by it, but she's out racing these bullets and very likely gonna try and stop each and every one of them from hurting someone who probably doesn't even need to be hurt. And we even see the point where Icarus is kind of doing the Superman thing, where he's just looking over the world while he's, hovering over it in orbit and trying to figure out where he can do the most good. And I love that the Eternals, they're not trying to change the messaging. They're not trying to, go out there and be like, oh, hey, look at us. It's the Eternals. We're out here doing God's work out here. We're just out here trying to be the best people we could possibly be. No, they're not doing that. They're just letting their actions speak for themselves, not telling anybody that they're doing it. They're just going out and doing the good work and just trying to be the best people they could possibly be. And who can hate on that? Not only that, we also learned in this issue that Zurus, once again, as was announced at the end of A.X.E. Judgment Day number 6, that he is back to being the Prime Eternal again. And it kind of begs the question, okay, well, what happens with Eros in this situation? And as it turns out, Eros is, while no longer Prime Eternal, Eros is actually become something else. Zurus has made Eros the Pope Minister of Change because, once again, that's a huge thing that the Eternals are trying to accomplish. They're trying to accomplish change. And Eros is one of the most beloved Eternals right now in existence, according to the rest of the Marvel Comics universe. People love Eros, and not just because of his powers to make people want to, please him, but no, just people like him because he actually gives a shit about them. Now, admittedly, while Zurus believes that humanity will probably be really slow to give up on their hatred of the Eternals, he does say that eventually at some point their society will collapse and they'll probably just forget about the whole resurrection thing, which is just Zurus being Zurus. I don't think there's any malice behind that. Zurus does not hate humanity. He's just been around long enough to know how humanity is. And honestly, a huge news cycle could come through and make people forget about the Eternals. That's just also how the world works. People will hear some bad news about something and in like a month or two, they'll forget about it because something worse has probably happened, or something that's not even as important. He also does point out the idea of the excess deviation rule that I mentioned earlier with Ajak, and talking about how they do have an alliance with both the Krakoan and Iraqi mutants, and that Zurus is making it a law that they are not allowed to act against the mutants in any way, shape, form, or fashion. And he especially makes a mention of the tricks, the assassins and fixers of the Eternals, because if you haven't been keeping up with the X-Men side of things, there is a new thing out on the market called Mysterium that only mutants have, and it's something that's kind of making its way across the cosmos as a form of currency that is referred to as the soul, as in, the soul system. And the tricks are motivated by money, so yeah, he's trying to make sure they don't go out there chasing the soul just to, do something interesting. But the thing that is interesting to me is that while Zurus is recognizing Ajak as a new celestial god, he doesn't seem very interested in following her new ways. He makes a point to bring up that anyone who follows her new mandates are outside of normal Eternal society. So it's one of those situations where the Eternals are going to be broken up into various factions, and we already kind of know that the core Eternals are already separating themselves from Zurus and his camp just by definition of the fact that they are following Ajak's way. So it's making this new dynamic for the Eternals that I'm almost angry at the fact that Kieran Gillen is not continuing his run on Eternals, at least not as far as I know yet. There hasn't been any announcement. There was no announcement at the back of this book, but it makes me sad that this run of Eternals is coming to an end, because this is technically the finale, not just of the Judgment Day event, but it's also the finale, like a final point on Kieran Gillen's run on the Eternals. I would love to see what Kieran Gillen could do if he was given an opportunity to continue writing this story, because he has just done so much to make the Eternals more interesting than anything I feel Marvel has ever done with the characters since the Neil Gaiman run on Eternals, which is, I would dare say, like, originally was my favorite run of the Eternals, but everything Kieran Gillen has done has made it a rival to that. And I would actually go out of my way to say Kieran Gillen's run is better than Neil Gaiman's, and that is a difficult thing for me to admit on a hot mic. But I want to get back to something that Zurus mentions in his notes that also has to do with some of the other things we talked about earlier, and something I mentioned about how the progenitor brought back everyone that was destroyed by him, but didn't really bring back anybody that wasn't destroyed by him. One thing that's brought up is Zurus brings up the machine. He talks about how the machine is going to basically be as it was. It was reset to factory default settings. It's not the same lovable, charming, affable machine that has been narrating the Eternals comics since Kieran Gillen took over, and is not the ever-evolving machine that we have known. The machine as the narrator of the Eternals comics and A.X.E. Judgment Day has been such a lovable character. Like, they speak in very modern terms. They understand memes and, modern day humor, and they were always just really dialed in. It was almost as if the narrator had their finger on the pulse of all things Eternals, but also all things that are modern day humanity. And all that's gone now. The machine has gone back to being a stuffy, fuddy-duddy, just straight up AI. Like, it speaks in very specific terms. It doesn't make jokes. It doesn't use modern day slang and jargon. But then something happens at the very end of this issue, as I was talking about earlier, where Icarus is hovering over the earth and looking down in ways that Superman is normally associated with doing, and just trying to figure out where he can go to do the most good. As the machine is narrating the ending of this, the machine specifically says the machine that is Earth is fully operational. No malfunction remains whatsoever. However, the very last panel we see, the machine leaves a winky face emoji. That is Kieran Gillen's way of letting you know that yes, the machine has been destroyed and reset, but the machine that we have been keeping up with this entire time, that has been a whole character itself, it's still in there somewhere. That there is at least some part of it that's coming back, and that is something I thought was a ray of light in what is otherwise such a very dire ending for the Eternals, at least as far as the machine goes. And I like it. I like this new dynamic that Kieran Gillen has set up, where he's revealed that, yeah, we have the heretic Eternals, which are the core Eternals, Icarus, Makari, Ajak, all the ones that you've seen in the Eternals movie if you've kept up with that. And of course, we also have the orthodox Eternals, who are going to be Eternals like Zurus and Eros, even though Eros admits in this issue that he doesn't want to do what he's doing technically, but he has to do it, and he wants to go with Phastos, Kingo, and everybody else to do what they do, but he can't. And we do also know there's still the Forgotten Ones, which is basically Gilgamesh and his fellow Eternals who don't trust the Celestials. They're still out there too, so it's technically 3 different factions of Eternals now. And so once again, you got the heretics, which are the core Eternals. You have the orthodox, which are Zurus and all the other Eternals. And you have the Forgotten Ones, which are led by Gilgamesh. So there's a whole new dynamic out there now that's just chef's kiss. It's so beautiful. And man, I just wish someone would continue the story, man. And someone good. So you gotta get somebody good. Like, could you imagine an Al Ewing or Jonathan Hickman writing the Eternals? It would be insane. The other thing I wanted to bring up too, and this is something that I thought was very interesting that comes up in this book, is Phastos reveals why the Eternals couldn't destroy Krakoa back during the Eve of Judgment one-shot that acted as the prelude for A.X.E. Judgment Day. We saw that when Druig tried to unleash a bomb on Krakoa, like an antimatter bomb that would literally just destroy the entire island and everyone on it, that the core principles activated and Druig was starting to be killed by the machine because it was acting against the machine, which is one of the core mandates. You have to protect the machine that is Earth. So why was it that when Krakoa was about to be destroyed, the machine reacted? We learn in this issue that the machine is birthed from Krakoa, technically speaking. When the machine was reset to factory defaults, it left a message that was strictly for Krakoa, and it's in this message that Phastos reveals when the Celestials came to Earth and they created Eternals, the humans, the Deviants. Apparently, the way it worked is kind of seemingly been retconned. It's always kind of been heavily implied that the Celestials just kind of created everything just kind of as they wanted in a specific way to create an ecosystem on Earth. They created humans first and then fashioned Eternals and Deviants from those humans that they had already created. Hence, kind of explaining why, even though Eternals can have children, why some are regarded as father and daughter, father and son, whereas others, it's like, oh, well, how did this happen? It was kind of just a really quick way for Kieran Gillen to come and be like, here, this is how this works. But what we also learned in this, Krakoa was already on Earth when the Celestials came to it. Now, this isn't technically new news because, as you may or may not know if you never kept up with the House of X stuff or Ten of Swords, Krakoa used to be adjoined with the island Araco, and together they were Okara. But back then, they existed long before humanity was really just roaming around the Earth. It was mostly mutants. It was really only mutants that were on the island. And we also learned in Steve Orlando's Marauders that there were precursors to mutants on Earth billions of years ago. So it's not really that far out of the realm of possibility that Krakoa was around, but it was a living island that was just roaming around on its own, and the Celestials took notice of it. When the Celestials created the machine that is Earth, or rather the systems that make up the machine that is Earth, they took inspiration from something, and it was Krakoa, which basically leads us to the understanding that yes, the machine that is Earth and Krakoa are one and the same. They're both equals in the same, but also Krakoa is technically, in a roundabout way, the mother and father of the machine. As Faso says, the message that the machine left for Krakoa was simply goodbye, mommy / daddy / self / other, which makes what happened in A.X.E. Judgment Day, Eve of Judgment #1 that much more obvious. Druid couldn't destroy Krakoa because it was a part of the machine, because not only was it the machine, but it was also the spawn of Krakoa. And I know one of the things I didn't really talk about in the video for A.X.E. Judgment Day #6, and it kind of comes up here in this issue. I'll just kind of gloss over it because technically it's kind of how it's done here. Yes, Druid is an exclusion. Yes, he is trapped with Uranos. And yes, Uranos knows, because Zurus has told him, that he will become a weapon for the mutants of Arakko and Krakoa to be used as they see fit. And if you ask how he feels about such a thing, he doesn't really seem to care. All he cares about is that he gets out. That's the one thing. When he asks Zurus to repeat what he just said, he doesn't get indignant about it. He's just like, okay, but I get out. That's all he cares about. So yeah, Uranos will definitely be back, and it seems like whenever he's used, he's already probably thought up a way to get around that whole 1 hour thing, because if he got out once, he's probably figured out other things as well. And I'm pretty sure when he got out that first time, I don't think we ever really fully got an idea of what he did with those last few minutes, wherever. Remember, he had a whole hour. It didn't even take him that long to wipe out most of Arakko. So yeah, I feel like he's already set things in motion because he knew he was going to get out again. Now, granted, he probably thought Druid was going to set him free again, but now that it would be the mutants of Arakko and Krakoa setting him free for, once again, just an hour. Imagine what he could do with an hour, depending on who it is he's being unleashed on. I can imagine with Fall of X coming up, he will very likely be set loose on Orcus and Nimrod. And so how long do you think it would take Uranos to figure out how to clap Nimrod's cheeks? But on the flip side of that, Orcus has gotten their hands on Eternal and Celestial tech. So they've gotten to look at what Uranos could do, probably already planned for him. So, But anyways, that's everything I wanted to talk about with A.X.E. Judgment Day Omega #1. It was a very good, solid wrap up, which, normally these Omega issues, they're never really the finale, but they're more just like kind of the epilogue for the main event. I thought they did a really good job of this. I thought Kieran Gillen did a fantastic job setting all this up, and regardless of what his place is now with the Eternals, we know he's going to continue writing Immortal X-Men, but whatever his place is with that, if he comes back and writes more Eternals, or if someone else takes over for him, he has set the table up so perfectly for someone to come in and write amazing stories. And whether they choose to do something with that is anybody else's guess. As you know, a lot of times when writers leave a particular run on something, the next writer who comes in doesn't even necessarily have to pay attention to what came before. It usually works better if they do, but a lot of times they're just trying to tell their own stories, and I can't hate on that. I know a lot of people hated the fact that Donny Cates came in and took over Hulk after Immortal Hulk, and Al Ewing done this amazing job of writing the character. And Donny Cates just kind of seems to be not ignoring it, but just doing his own thing. And a lot of people don't like that. And I've noticed the same thing with Venom. When Donny Cates left Venom, a lot of people didn't really jive with what was going on with Venom with Al Ewing and Ram V, which was really weird. It was kind of a flip-flop there. But on the flip side of that, a lot of people love Jason Aaron's Thor. I'm one of them. And a lot of people weren't sure what to think about what Donny Cates was doing with Thor. So at the same time, he respected a lot of what came before, but he also was doing, yet again, his own thing. So I think it's just your mileage is going to vary with that, and we'll just have to wait and see what happens next. But Judgment Day it was good. It was really good. If for some reason you're checking out this video and you did not keep up with any of A.X.E. Judgment Day in any degree or capacity, check out this playlist right here. It is going to be everything that I've done covering that Marvel Comics event. And if you want to know more about the Eternals, check out this playlist down here. In the meantime, let me know what you thought about A.X.E. Judgment Day Omega #1 and the event as a whole. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.